Today we're making a childhood favorite of mine, from my grandmother's recipe to my mom's recipe, sesame bread. We're going to start by melting 1 stick of butter on low to medium heat in a saucepan. Using a higher quality butter will make a pretty big difference here, so I'd suggest something like Kerrygold or a grass-fed butter. Next, we're going to measure out 2 cups of whole milk, and then transfer 6 ounces or 3/4 of a cup into another bowl. We're going to use the 6 ounces of whole milk to feed our yeast, so we need to warm it up to somewhere between 105 degrees and 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Add 4.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast along with 2 pinches of sugar to the warmed milk. Give it a stir and make sure that bubbles start to form within 5 to 10 minutes to confirm that your yeast is alive. Switch back to the melted butter and add 1/3 cup of sugar followed by 2 tablespoons of salt, and make sure to give it a nice stir so that everything is mixed evenly. Next, we're going to crack and whisk 3 whole eggs and add that to our melted butter, sugar, and salt mixture. We want to do this on low heat, if any heat at all, so that the eggs don't cook when we combine them. Follow this up with the remaining 1 1/4 cup of whole milk along with our bloomed yeast. Measure out 5 cups of all-purpose flour into a large container that you can combine all ingredients in and start to mix. Make sure you get any lumps of flour and try to get the most even consistency you can for the dough. This dough starts out pretty wet, so don't be worried that it's too sticky. We're going to turn it out onto a mixing surface and work in an additional 2 cups of all-purpose flour as we go. It should take somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes to work the rest of that flour into the dough. It's going to start out really shaggy and sort of sticky, but just keep working it and eventually it'll come out to a nice, even, soft surface. There's no best way to knead this, so just incorporate all of the flour evenly and try not to make any lumps inside the dough. Once you've gotten the additional flour incorporated fully, we're going to move it into a slightly oiled bowl and put it in a spot with some residual heat with some saran wrap over the top to rest for 2 hours, or at least until doubled in size. It's important to get it as soon as it's doubled or right at the 2-hour mark so that we don't allow it to rise too much, since we have another rise after we do the pleating. So when it's ready, we're going to remove it from the bowl and divide it in half, and then divide each of those halves into 3 pieces. These are going to form the actual pleats, or what we're going to use to braid and turn them into loaves. So this recipe will ultimately result in 2 loaves of bread. So once you have your 3 individual pieces from your half, start to roll them out, and you can also pick them up and sort of squeeze them so that they become sort of the thickness of a rolling pin or so. And then once you have all 3, you're going to lay them out, putting all of the ends on one side together and squeezing them so that they combine into one piece at the top. And then to braid, you're going to take 1 piece from the outside and move it to the inside of the other 2 pieces over and over again. So if you start on the far left, you move it into the middle of the other 2, and then you move the opposite side into the middle of the remaining side. Then you pinch the end together, and then you have 1 loaf. Here's another view from top down. So pinching the top again, starting from the outside, moving it into the middle, and then repeating until there's none left, making sure to kind of squeeze them so there's no air gaps in between the pleats. So once you have your 2 loaves, we're going to transfer them to a lightly oiled baking tray and allow them to rise again until they're about doubled in size. If at this point you notice that they're not rising enough in the second rise, it's possible that you didn't get the dough out soon enough and that it overrose, but most of the time they'll continue to rise no matter what. It's a good idea at this point to preheat your oven and cover the loaves with some towels in order to capture some residual heat and make sure you get a nice second rise. The final things to do before you get these into the oven for baking is to put a light egg wash on them and dust them with sesame seeds. Make sure you get every nook and cranny of the bread with the egg wash and get a nice even coating so that you get the perfect light brown coloring once they come out of the oven. We're going to bake these for 30 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, rotating the tray halfway through. Once they're out of the oven, it's important to get them transferred to a wire rack or somewhere where they can cool off of the surface that they're on to make sure that the bake finishes properly and you get a nice bottom crust. And that's it. As always, the recipe is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. See you guys next time with a new one.